Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Magic Bricks webinar series, our endeavor to trigger a buy and bring back consumer confidence in the real estate market. We have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of real estate industry. The topic of today's session is how it is wise to invest in a funded project. Our guest speaker today is Nitin Goyal, Managing Partner, Real Estate Investments. Nitin has over 16 years of experience in real estate private equity investments, project finance, and business strategy. At Milestone, he oversees investments for over rupees 1,500 crores across residential projects in India. Previously, he has worked with AIG Global Real Estate as co-fund manager, managing US $280 million fund and AIG proprietary capital. Earlier served as a national head, origination and client relationships, real estate finance at ICICI Bank itself. Along with him, we have Jayshree Kurup. She is a head of content and research department, Magic Bricks. She has been a business journalist for over 2 decades with the Times of India, the Economic Times, and the Financial Express. She forayed into research in 2002. She is a regular guest columnist with a number of established media, including the Times Group and others. We will start the session with the presentation. Over to you, Jayshree.
Thank you, Neha. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the Magic Bricks webinar series. Today we have a very interesting presenter with us, a seasoned professional who has been managing real estate funds and ensuring that real estate funds do well. Today he's on the other side of the table. He's coming to advise you as consumers how you should assess projects that you invest into or you buy into. It need not be an investment. It can be your first home or even a second home that you're looking to stay in. However, when you make that real estate investment, it is a huge ticket size and you want to be sure that your money is safe. Over to you, Nitin.
Thank you, Jayshree, for your kind words, and Neha as well. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here on this webinar and interact with your viewers and we are part of the group today. So it's something which perhaps concerns everybody who is looking to invest in real estate. Whether as a buyer and whether as an investor. Generally, real estate is a big ticket investment, and it means that in most cases and early on in our lives, it's a large commitment to make, and perhaps it means not only putting a lot of hard savings in a project, but also taking a longer term commitment of 15-20 years to be able to buy a home or an apartment or flat, whatever. I mean, in general, any real estate is a long-term investment. So just to take everybody through, if we can go to the next slide, please. Just one second. Sorry, can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So, like I said, purchasing a property is one of the biggest investment decisions of anybody's life, and it usually means that in the short term, we all would have to make some compromises, perhaps on our living style, on various other, our lifestyle measures. However, what is it which is important when we kind of look at buying a property? While it seems very simple that you identify a property and you have the money with you, or you have a bank loan on it, and there is a seller. So the transaction sounds very simple, but it is perhaps easier said than done when you actually go and try to lock in a property. So apart from the fact that you have to have the money, what is it that you need to do in order to ensure that the property you're buying is safe and the money that you're putting is safe in future? So let's just kind of see how what are the key criteria that we have to look at when we buy a property. So some of the important documents that we would like you to consider for any property that you're buying is, one is the title of the property. So if it's a developer who's building a residential project, you would definitely want to know whether the land title of the developer, he owns the property, it is in his name, there is no litigation on it, there are no court cases going on, or there are no encumbrances, etc. So how do you do that? You typically go to a lawyer and ask them for a title opinion and do a check on the title of the property. So that is the key criteria, that in future if you have to own, then your title of the property or the flat should not be questioned. Which also means that the previous title chain of the various owners should be clean. And that is what a lawyer will tell you when they go through the property papers. So that's point number one. Second is the usage. So are you building a residential project on a land which is approved for commercial, or are you building it for on a residential plot, or are you building on an industrial plot? So a lot of times, and especially with some perhaps unscrupulous developers, or people who are not complying with the law, you could get into trouble where, or even in a no development zone, people have built properties and sold it. Now, if you've not done your checks properly, there could be potential trouble that later on, even if the title was clear, you are perhaps not even allowed to build. So what is very, very important is that the purpose that we are buying the property for, or for what it is built, is permitted by the law and the zoning plan of that area. So that is where the master plan of the area in which you are buying a property is extremely critical. So assuming, say, you are buying in Gurgaon, it would mean that there is a license which the Director Town and Country Planning issues for that particular land, and it's also a master plan for the overall development of that sector. Now within that, it could be residential, it could be commercial, it could be retail, it could be institutional for hospitals, for schools. So those are things which a lawyer or a technical expert would look at and tell you that yes, this is meant for residential purpose. The developer is entitled to build apartments here, or this is meant for office complex, so you are okay to buy a office or a retail shop. So that is something that will be determined based on the land use certificate, the master plan approval for that particular location. Then comes the building plan approval, which essentially means that what you're buying or what is being built as per the approvals that the relevant authority has given for construction. In a lot of cases, what we have seen is that the area which is being built is in excess of what has been approved, or the numbers of floors which have been built are far higher, far greater than what have been approved. And assume, say, you buy on the 22nd floor and the project is only approved till maybe the 19th floor. So then you could have potential trouble because those are unauthorized floors. So again, technical expert would check whether your buying is as per approval, the building is as per approval or not, and in future there is no potential risk of demolition or any other government authority coming in and seizing the floors or asking it to be kind of demolished. Environmental clearance typically involves that for any project of a particular size and above would need clearance from the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So this is a requirement for all the projects which are being built maybe over the last 5-10 years, and this is a prerequisite for initiation of the construction as well. However, some developers do start projects and start asking you for money. So in which case, this is important for you to check whether the project has received the environmental clearance or not. The other NOCs could mean, if there is a conversion of land use, or if there is a fire NOC which is required, or a height approval required from either the Civil Aviation Authority or any other relevant authority. then they should be in place for the flat that you're booking for. This especially becomes more important in case of high rises, say in Bombay or in Gurgaon, where the height of the building is determined by the road width and by the FSI available, and also by the location of the property. So it should not be in a no-fly zone or should not be in the funnel of the airport. So based on that, you would have to check as to whether the property is okay to buy and the height is as per approvals, etc. Other thing you would want to consider is that whether developer has taken any loan on the property or there are any other encumbrances or mortgage on the particular property. Now, if there is a loan, then you have to understand what that loan has been taken for or what the encumbrances are for. Generally, when the building construction is commenced, the developer receives a commencement certificate, and that means that the project is good to start construction. And finally, if a property is ready and you're buying a ready property, then apart from these, you should also look at whether the project has received occupancy certificate or a OC as we call it. So that means that the project has all the requisite approvals and it has been properly constructed as per the guidelines, and you could potentially go for it. So, now we have taken you through what you would want to consider, but how is it that as an institution or an NBFC or a private equity firm, some projects would be better funded and perhaps have a lower risk in terms of completion versus some others? So typically, that is the idea of this talk, that why is it safe to invest or buy projects where there is some kind of institutional funding available. What typically happens is that institutions do their own diligence on the title and approvals, and they have their legal firms and title experts and the technical experts who have been in that field, architects, etc., which do a very, very detailed check, including say a 30-year check on the title itself, which throws up whether the property has any loopholes in terms of title, is there any link missing in the chain, has there any dispute been there earlier? If yes, then has it got resolved? Are there any encumbrances, etc.? So all those things come up in a detailed due diligence which is done by an institution or a private equity firm. So if somebody has invested and you are aware that okay, there is a particular institution which has funded, whether it is banks, SBI, HDFC, ICICI Bank, or firms like us, to some extent there is a comfort that there is a due diligence which has been done by their lawyers, and there is no potential or very minimal risk from a title perspective or approval perspective. Also, it matters because typically banks and institutions fund developers with good track record and an ability to build and sell the project. So in a lot of cases, a project which has got funding will mean that the money is being used for construction, and which will ensure that there is a financial closure as well on the project. Especially in times like these when the sales are slow, it is very important that the developer has enough backing and availability of money to ensure that the construction of the project does not stop. Which is where, again, if there is an institutional backing, it would support him to ensure that the construction moves ahead as per schedule, and the potential risk of delays in completion of the project to a certain level is minimized. Another thing which institutions look for in any investment is the good execution track record of the developer. So, which effectively means that there is a reputational risk to the developer as well for non-completion or delay of the project, as well as the returns that the investor or the institution are looking for. So they are very, very focused on ensuring that the project is on track, and they have regular mechanisms to understand the project progress, and also sit with the developer to ensure if the sales are slow, what methods can be adopted to improve the sales and the construction as well. So all of these put together, typically versus a project which is being done on its own by the developer, uh, we would say that you have a better chance of getting a project delivery on track and as per schedule and as per the guidelines in an institution funded project. So what does that entail? I mean, one is obviously the institutions will look for developer putting in some capital on their own, maybe buy the land or at least part fund the land, ensure that they give guarantees to the banks, etc. if they have to take construction loan, and then work with private equity firms like ours in the project to ensure that the project gets built over a period of time as per the plan. In institution projects, most of the times we will look at that the projects are not of very long duration of say 8-10 years, and they will fund in phases, which also again means that the developer is focused on ensuring that one particular phase is delivered before they commence the next phase. This also means that there is a lesser risk of project getting delayed on account of a very large area being opened up for sale and then resulting in potential delays for the project. So what is the kind of funding available for real estate? If you look at it, there are basically, and if we look at, earlier most of the funding was from private sources or HNIs, etc., which a developer would take. It would come at a very high cost. But these HNIs also have very limited ability in some cases to understand the risks of the project and go into the detailed technical due diligence and check on the title, etc. So it's more informal sources of money where the developer knows this HNI and they have a working relationship over the last few years, and the guy will give him money and at a high rate and ask him money back in whatever 12 or 24 months. But this is very informal. No proper analysis of the project done by the HNI, and definitely not much detailed due diligence done on the project or the land. So over the past few years, or maybe even more than a decade, what we have seen is that banks have become active in terms of providing construction finance to these developers, which at least ensures that on a good project with a good developer, the project will get complete. Now there could be delays at times, but at least you know that if the money is there, and banks will ensure that the developer completes the project, because they will also get their full money back with interest only if the project is completed. So there is a complete alignment of interest of banks, of NBFCs, or private equity funds to see that the project takes off and gets delivered. That is where private equity funds and NBFCs come into play, because they get in at an early stage. So in terms of checking the various approvals and title, etc., they are even more, I would say, cautious and do a very thorough analysis. And they work with some of the best firms in India, whether it's an Amarchand Mangal Das or an AZB or a DSK, etc., and the architects, to understand what are the risks of the project, or are there any chances of the project getting stuck because of lack of approvals during the development stage itself. So those are some of the issues which are taken care of, and the risks are mitigated when a private equity fund or an NBFC or a bank comes in, and that is a very institutional way of funding for real estate vis-a-vis a private or a HNI funding. So what are the key advantages of investing into a funded project? So if we are investing with a developer who has a stable track record and he has also invested capital, then there is an alignment of interest. The developer will also see money coming in only once he completes the project. So he would not want to default on institutions, because that would mean that going forward for his other projects he will face difficulty in raising money. And definitely it adds to the developer ability and his execution track record, etc., and he is able to command a better premium if he is able to deliver the projects on time. So this is a particular advantage in an institutional funded project. Like I've said earlier, a detailed diligence is done, and an assessment of the entire development potential of the project is also carried out. So it is not something like today, we thought it would be a 1 lakh square feet project, and tomorrow it could become a 2 lakh square feet project. So the project then requires more money, or there is a shortage of capital. So all those things are evaluated at a very early stage, and accordingly the money is organized to ensure that the project does not run short of capital or any other resources. In addition, we do a credit history check as well to ensure that there are no defaults of the developer in the past, and which can make it difficult going forward for him to be able to do the project or raise enough capital for the completion of the project. Plus, funds also put in mechanisms where they appoint professionals and agencies like project management companies and quantity surveyors to monitor the project on a periodic basis. It could be quarterly, mostly it is quarterly, it could also be monthly, and they get an update on the status of the project, how much construction has happened, are there any cost overruns in the project which could occur going forward. And these are some of the early signals that we keep track on to ensure that the project is on time. And even if there is an overrun, then how to deal with it. So, if there is something which has been perhaps planned earlier, at least you can proactively take steps to correct that and provide for, rather than it coming as a surprise. So, this is a very, very important thing, that when we have agencies who report and independently check on the progress of the construction, there are early signals of whether the thing is as per the schedule or is there a delay, and how to handle if there is a delay. And then other advantage obviously is that any project which is progressing as per schedule is likely to appreciate faster over a period of time than a project which is delayed or which doesn't have clear approvals or doesn't have a clean title. So in a longer period, a project which has been institutionally funded, even from investors or buyers' point of view, will perhaps appreciate faster than other projects in the micro market. And hence, for the same amount of money, you would have a better return over a longer period. Like we said, there are well-built systems of project management which ensures regular monitoring of project. Now here, another thing that is very critical that we do is also ensure that all the sales proceeds from buyer which is coming is in a particular escrow account, and that money is then ensured that it doesn't go out and get used for some other projects of the developers. In a sense, that money or the sale proceeds are being used only for that project, which has been a bit of a challenge, in projects which doesn't have institutional funding, that the developers have launched the project and then they have got that money and then they've taken it out and gone and bought some other land. So in projects where there are private equity firms or NBFCs, there is always an escrow account where the institutions are controlling that through a joint signatory mechanism and ensuring that the money is released only for construction. This is a very important mechanism that all institution funds put into place for any real estate project. Then of course, we as a firm insist on better construction techniques, perhaps look at green buildings which not only reduce the carbon footprint but going forward reduce the maintenance cost of that building itself. All these things will definitely result in a better appreciation of projects as well. So how do we, what is the process that a private equity fund follows for investing in a project? If we look at this chart, we obviously receive proposals from multiple agencies, and then we do a preliminary screening, which would mean understanding what the promoter profile is, what is the micro market, what is the current selling rate, etc., and what is the developer proposal for the project. If we believe that based on the preliminary screening, it makes sense for us to look at the project in further detail, then we get into a detailed review where we also then put out our models, understand that if the project gets delayed, etc., what could be the cost, what could be the sales price like, and will the developer be able to then arrange capital and ensure that the project is complete. This also includes assessing the various approvals that are required, what are the timelines for such approvals, and whether there is any risk of getting these approvals. For instance, I mean, is the project seeking approvals which are routine in nature, or do they want, the developer wants any further approval which is discretionary and has not been obtained in earlier projects, could be a challenge. So that is a recipe for disaster because it could lead to potential delays. So mostly institutions will avoid projects where there is no clarity on any discretionary approvals. So once we know and we have kind of done a detailed analysis and we believe that the project is something that is funded, or we can fund it, we present it to a investment committee. That investment committee will obviously then again evaluate the project, understand the pros and cons, and based on that either approve or decline. So if we have an approval from the investment committee, then we do a detailed due diligence which would involve hiring lawyers to do the title search, technical due diligence, financial due diligence, etc. And then we would sign the agreement for investing the capital. Subsequent to that, we are an active manager where we do quarterly reviews, the team visits the site, and we track the agreed business plan both on sales, on construction, on costs, on the kind of product that we are going to do, etc. And that is an ongoing activity on any project that we have invested in till we exit. So the idea is that we will exit once the project is close to completion. Under construction, and some of these are expected to be complete in a year's time. So again, I mean, this has happened because there has been an institutional, there is a national level developer. So both from a reputation standpoint and financial, backing, the project has enough and more resources to ensure that it is delivered on time. The other project that we are talking about again is a very large project of 2 million square feet, and again the project has received good sales because the focus is on execution. So in 1.5 years time, you can see that the project is already ahead of schedule in terms of construction for the phase 1, and we have sold almost 40% of the total area of so far. So that has ensured that there is enough money in the project itself to complete the construction without requiring any further capital from the institution. This ensures that there is at any point in time enough resource, whether in terms of capital or a focus on the project, to ensure timely delivery. And these are again tailor-made towards more affordable mid-segment housing projects. So what has happened is because the project is ahead of schedule in terms of construction and sales are good, uh, when this project was launched, it was about 3,000 rupees a square feet. Today it is at a price of about 4,000 rupees a square feet in a matter of about 18 to 24 months. So in a market which is down, we have seen almost 20% growth year on year in terms of returns. I think that is what we would like to point out, and it just means that buying real estate is a long-term commitment. Please do not invest for the short-term gains. Thank you. Any questions and answers? We are open.
Yeah. Thank you, Nitin. That was really interesting, and it answers a lot of questions, or it raises a lot of questions in the consumer's mind that normally don't get addressed at the consumer level. And let's get on to the questions. There's Alok who says, in a high growth economy, as salary levels rise, the younger generation is planning home purchases. What is the best way for a first-time buyer to set a budget to purchase a home?
Well, that's a difficult one, but if you're a young salaried guy who's maybe starting out in his career, one of the key things is that you have to look at it's a 15-20 year commitment, and whether you can service that at best maybe from 40 to 50% of your compensation at any point in time. So I would avoid that, taking a EMI burden of anything more than 40-50% of your current compensation with some, escalations or salary hikes inbuilt into that.
Right. So if you're a young buyer and you want to buy a house, don't your EMI should not be more than 40 to 50% of your take-home salary. Otherwise, you will have to compromise your lifestyle. That's what Nitin is telling you. There is Prashant who says, as per your expertise and knowledge, which is a good city to reap maximum returns on investment? And Nitin, this is something that we periodically get from users. Which is a good city? A big city, small city? How do you assess which city you should invest in if you're not in favor of any one city or the other?
The reason you get this question is because there is no answer to this question. See, my belief is that you should invest in a property which is close to where you can manage it if you're looking at it from an investment standpoint.
Right.
It is no point that you are living in Jaipur and you go and buy a property in Bangalore, because you will first not have so much of ability perhaps, and especially if you're a maybe first or the second time buyer and not an HNI, to really know which property to buy, which micro market is good, and where the property will appreciate. So second is that you are anyways far away and it is difficult to manage even if you want to rent out, etc. So my suggestion would be that buy property close to where you can manage it, and if you're buying it for self-use, then there is absolutely no problem.
So actually you must know the city that you're buying in. In fact, I'd like to add a little bit to what Nitin said here, that property is not a city-wide phenomenon. It's not whether Delhi does better than Mumbai or Mumbai does better than Pune. It's more like which locality and in fact specifically which property you buy, which does well or better than other properties. And that's where it is so important to choose this, the project that you buy. If the project's due diligence has been done, especially some of the things very quickly what Nitin said, if I were to recap, he says that there is a lower risk associated with projects which are funded by institutional money, because those due diligence has been done, or the feasibility of the project has already been assessed. Another thing he said is that a bank funded project, funded project is also eligible and safe. And one of the things that in the course of the discussion we would like you to answer, Nitin, is
Yes.
Is a bank funded project as eligible and safe as compared to a PE funded project? Is there any difference between the two? Would you like to answer?
Certainly, I'll take that up. And just to kind of go back, and that was the last point in my slide, that even in a down market, there are projects which have seen appreciation of 15-20% annually where we have invested in. So and those are in markets which are perhaps not doing so well on an overall basis, and the project next door, which is ready and built, is at 20% cheaper than a under construction project. So simply, I mean, you have to have the ability to assess and know the micro market in which you want to purchase, and go with a good developer is what my suggestion would be. Now coming to this question, whether bank versus PE. See, typically private equity firms help in acquisition of projects and work with developers at an early stage. So maybe for land acquisition or pre-approvals is when most private equity firms would invest. Banks would come in to give money purely for construction of the project. So there is a possibility, and in many cases you will see that where there are private equity firms invested, there is also a bank funding at a later date, because private equity firms do not put 100% of the money. So between the developer and private equity firm, they would put in money to ensure that the land is bought, plus there is some money for construction. And then they would obtain a bank financing to ensure that the project has financial closure. So what would happen is that if you are getting in even before a bank funding is in place, but a private equity firm has already invested, it most likely would mean that from a title perspective, from a due diligence point of view, the project is okay to invest in. And it would also mean that going forward, from a home buyer's perspective, that property would be eligible for mortgage loan, which is very important. So today, even as private equity firms, we do evaluate that whether a project will be eligible to get home loans for the its buyers. And if that is not something which is possible, then we will not invest in.
Right. This again brings us back to the fact that these are experts who know how to do the due diligence, and once the experts are at work, they make life a little simpler for the retail investors who don't know how to assess as well as they do. However, having said that, we truly believe that every property buyer should be enabled with more and more information to make their own decisions, and that's why we at Magic Bricks bring experts like Nitin to talk to you. We also make all this information available to you over a period of time, and we also create a section called advice.magicbricks.com where we mine the data from the back end and make more and more tools that you can use to make your own decisions as well. Even if an expert has been at it, you are your best advisor at the end of the day. Let's go on to the next question. There is a question saying, is 2016 a good time to invest in real estate properties which are affordable? I want to know the bank funded projects available in the Gurgaon area. Essentially, if it is a bank funded project in the affordable category, is it a good time to buy today, and why?
Okay, so I wouldn't know of all the projects in Gurgaon which have been bank funded, but my sense is that if it's a good reputed developer, most likely they will be able to obtain bank financing, if not today, when they start the project. So the critical thing is that do they have the land, do they have the license to develop that project, and have they started, have they received approvals for construction? Because only then will they even be eligible to apply for bank loans. So first and foremost, we should be able to determine that. And for a good developer, most of these things, if they have this, they surely will be able to obtain, construction loans for the project construction. And in terms of returns, I think, typically, first and foremost, I always believe that investing in real estate is not for the short term. So if you are looking to flip in 2 years time or 3 years time, there is no guarantee that you will make money. You could potentially even end up losing money. It is an illiquid investment, and I'm sure the gentleman who's asking would be well aware, or a lady would be well aware, that there are projects in Gurgaon where the rates have dropped compared to what they were 2 years back. and still there is no buyer. So the ability to hold your asset or your investment during a downturn is very, very critical when you invest in real estate. Um, any down market, whether it is in real estate or stocks, is always the best opportunity, uh, from a long-term perspective. So to that end, whether you are looking for your own self or as an investment, I think 2016 is a good year to actually go in and buy the property that you want to. Just do the checks that we have outlined earlier, and don't buy it for the short term. Then really we can't say whether you make money or not make money. A longer period of time, definitely it's a good buy.
Okay, when Nitin, as a corollary to this, if you buy a property in a down cycle, when you get the best rates because the values are fairly stable or have even gone down, is there a rule of the thumb how long a property investment should be held?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, there are people who buy property and keep it for even 20, 25 years, or we hear stories of people buying property at 1 lakh rupees, and that in Nariman Point has gone up to a few crores. So, frankly, it is the need and what you see, the potential opportunity when you want to sell the property, what should decide your exit. I mean, if you think that this property has maxed out and you have better opportunities or maybe newer growth areas where you would want to invest in, that should determine, rather than saying whether this is the max that this property will appreciate.
Right. Create a benchmark for yourself, and if the property reaches that benchmark, assess whether you can get something else for that money, so that your money grows better, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. We've got Mahi from Delhi who says, does an approved project have a financial number or code that helps us to assess that it is an invested project?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that. Can you come again, please?
Mahi says, how can an individual, essentially what he's saying is, how can an individual assess whether a project is funded or not? When I go to buy a project, how will I know that it is a funded project?
So a lot of times now, in fact, developers themselves are very motivated to tell you that the project has been funded either by an NBFC or a private equity firm or a bank, because they themselves want to tell you upfront to minimize any concerns that you have whether the project will get completed or not. That is number one. Number two is that you could perhaps do a check in the ROC where there are charges if the property is mortgaged for a bank loan, etc. That will be very clear. Third, otherwise you can always ask the developer to tell you upfront whether this property has any funding, whether any firm has invested, or is there a bank loan. And most of the times it is mentioned on the brochure as well. If so, I think times are changing. Most people and most developers now are very amenable to at least telling you whether the project has any financing or not.
So either the developer himself would have put it in the brochures or would have told you that this is a funded project. And in case the developer hasn't told you, you're well within your rights to go and check whether the developer has any structured financing for that project, so that you know whether it's a funded project or not. In fact, we've got Salim from. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I'm saying even if you talk to a few brokers in that micro market, it's something that you will get to know.
Okay. So even your agents and brokers will be able to tell you whether that project is funded or not.
Yes.
In fact, Salim from Hyderabad also had a similar query. How will I know the property available in Hyderabad is funded by banks or not? So what you're saying is ask brokers, ask the developer, or in many cases it is there in the project brochure itself. Right?
Yeah, in fact, banks are also saying that you should mention on the brochure. So, and when you're buying, so banks are insisting that you must tell the buyer that there is this project which has been funded, and in a lot of cases where the project has been funded, when you cut a check, it could be in a particular escrow account, which would ensure that the money is going into that escrow account, which is controlled by the bank or by the private equity firm. So that again will give you an indication, but that would be when you have perhaps made your mind and at a little later when you are ready to pay the money.
Right. There is Harneek Singh Puri from Pune who says that many developers are offering affordable homes without compromising on quality for as low as 10 lakhs. Are these projects bank funded too?
They could be, yeah. I mean, like, Tata Housing has done a project in Boisar. Um, I don't know whether they took bank funding or not, but, the question is not that if it is affordable and it is a 10 lakh rupee apartment, so it won't get funding. I don't think, banks are saying that.
The project should have viability, right? The developer should have the ability to complete the project and take it through to completion on time, and the project should have the viability so that consumers find it worth buying. These are the criteria largely applied, right?
In fact, banks are more than keen to fund projects, and especially home buyers, for affordable housing projects. So for them, it is also a priority sector lending, which they are required to adhere to from the Reserve Bank of India guidelines. So they are more than keen to, fund buyers as well for such projects.
Right. Nitin, maybe I would like to ask you a query here. We hear that banks NPAs are rising because the real estate sector is not performing so well. What happens to is that also part of the funding process, and should the consumer know a little more about that?
Yes, they should. I mean, there is no question why the consumer should not know, but to the best of my knowledge, there are no significant NPAs on the real estate projects and especially residential projects.
Right.
In the
It's in large commercial projects.
No, even commercial. I don't think real estate projects typically are. I mean, they are under stress, no doubt. But whether they have gone and become NPA, the situation is not as bad or as serious as it is perhaps for some other sectors. The challenge really for the developers has been that the sales have dried up, and which is where banks are also pushing them to either lower the price and sell and do something about it. Because end of the day, buyers have to be in the market, and that's when the project will succeed. But I really don't think that there's an NPA situation. However, like you said, that the buyers have a right, but unfortunately, there is no clear-cut mechanism in which to determine that whether the particular developer or a particular project is under stress. The best way to determine that currently is that if the project construction is going on, then it's a better bet than somewhere where it's just plain land and the project is perhaps some time away from start of construction. So you're better off investing in a project which is under construction and which you can go to the site and see for yourself.
Right. That's a very sensible advice, listeners. One of the things that you should do, your role in the property buying is as important as that of any expert. The experts will do the due diligence in the sense, should they invest into the projects. The private equity funds and the private funds are actually investing towards the land buying and short-term lending. The banks invest for to developers to complete projects and to take it through to completion, so that and then to fund the retail buyers. But ultimately, the choice is yours. Is there movement on the site? Does that developer have a track record of delivery? Does the developer take funds, complete that project, and then move on to the next, or does he just buy land and keep it using the funds that he has? These are things that you yourself can assess when you see the stages of construction. If construction is going on at a rapid pace, that really means that there is no shortage of funds. The developer has the intent to deliver the project on time. Rehan has asked, does funding guarantee any kind of security for the future?
I mean, guaranteed to whom? I'm sorry, I didn't follow
I
that.
think it is for the retail buyers, and I would, I think what he does mean is that you have said that the private equity players fund early stages and banks fund towards the later stages. But does that mean that that project will do better in the future as well?
Yeah, so, I mean, there is no guarantee per se, but if banks and private equity firms are putting in money and these are significant amount of capital, they have a vested interest to ensure that the project construction is on track and that the project gets delivered, because only then even these guys will see the money, whether it's bank or private equity firm. So to that extent, their interest is aligned with the home buyer interest, and end of the day, money is only going to come to them when people buy homes. If people don't buy homes, at some point in time, construction will stop. So what they are in essence doing is ensuring that there is working capital available on the project to take care of any capital requirements, and in the process they will track all the various parameters, do their own diligence. So there is a, I would say, greater possibility and a much better chance of such projects not only getting completed, but also in future have a better appreciation in terms of returns. But there is no guarantee.
When a
Even banks.
project actually, I would actually take something that you said a little earlier, Nitin. During the presentation, Nitin said, regular and clean projects, clear projects, do better than otherwise and they appreciate faster. Which means that if the developer has committed to a certain life cycle in the construction of the project and adheres to it, the project goes on time and is delivered on time, those projects tend to be the ones that also do better in the future because it is well constructed, it is not in a rush, it is according to certain norms that were laid down, and future buyers also prefer to buy into those projects. Now I've got a very interesting question, Nitin, from a person called Anju, who says, does external funding mean that the developer may be bankrupt?
No, if the developer was bankrupt, he would get no funding. That's a very interesting one. Mostly I think I would actually look at it the other way, that if a developer is able to get funding, that speaks a little bit about his track record and his reputation and credit worthiness. So it effectively means that there are people who are willing to back him on a real estate project which he will deliver over a period of time. So I don't think it is in any remote way connected to his going bankrupt. It could be that he is putting less capital, or he is bringing his ability of development, and somebody else is putting in the capital. But it definitely does not mean that he is bankrupt.
Okay, now we've got Chintan from Gurgaon who says, please throw some light on the future of affordable residential projects in Sector 150 Noida by small builders. Now let's take this as on a more macro level. What they're saying is, if you go to small developers, small builders, is it safe to invest with small builders? Do funds like yours fund small builders as well, or only large reputed developers?
Well, I think, see, everybody starts small and everybody makes beginning somewhere. So, it would be very unfair of me to say that somebody, just because he's a small developer, doesn't mean he doesn't have a good track record. There are multiple very, very small developers, but with an extremely good credit record and an even better execution track record. So, they have chosen to stay small, maybe do smaller projects because of their own choice. So whether the developer is small or large, I think what is more important is, does he have the ability to deliver what he is undertaking? And if he has done similar size projects in the past, and he has the capital, then I think it doesn't matter whether he's a, so to say, not large or maybe a small developer. In that micro market, he may still command a premium over some of the large developers.
Right. Nitin, I think we are into the last couple of questions. I thought that it was important to ask you, if a first-time developer comes to you, somebody new, how would you as a private equity lender assess a new player in the market, whether it is worth funding them or not?
Yeah. So typically, as a policy, we don't fund first-time developers, and the reason is that if they have not been in that industry, then we don't want to take a risk, because this is end of the day investors' money, and there is a broad set of guidelines that we follow when we invest in a project, and promoter and their ability to deliver is one of the very critical components of that philosophy. However, there are developers, who perhaps maybe say, it's a separation in the family, and then two brothers, one of them decides to go and start on his own, but they have relevant experience, they have done development over the last many years, and then they are starting out on their own. In such cases, we do evaluate, and perhaps may even invest. But by a new developer, I mean people who do not have any uh, previous track record of development. Maybe they are good landowners and they just want to monetize their property. We wouldn't really be backing them.
Okay, and the last query of the day, I've got at least 4 or 5 people from different cities. There's Lakshmi Shukla from Gurgaon, there's Shailesh Pandey from Mumbai, there are many others who are asking, how safe is it to buy land, plots, rather than built up properties for individual buyers, especially when it is early stage areas like maybe the Yamuna Expressway and so on. What would you advise them as somebody who knows the property market well?
So like I said, I mean, in India over the last many years, buying land has been one of the most profitable investment avenues, where people have made returns superior to perhaps anything else. The key really is, one, I mean, do your due diligence in terms of the title, because a lot of times what has happened, and we have seen this, is that either they are unauthorized plots or don't have approvals, and or even our agriculture, land which have been just been cut into plots and sold to unsuspecting buyers. So please be careful of that. There is absolutely nothing wrong in buying uh, land or a plot. Just be sure that you have the ability to manage. And perhaps one of the risks is, which is not so much there in perhaps North India, is that there should not be spotters or risk of somebody else coming and sitting on your empty land. So if you can manage that and you can hold on to the property, it's a good investment option. If you don't want to build, that's your choice. But nowadays, authorities like Yamuna Expressway, I am told, are putting in clauses where they want you to start construction of the homes in a certain defined time frame. But otherwise, yeah, land has always been a good option.
Okay, thank you so much, Nitin. That was a very insightful presentation. Over to you, Neha.
Thank you so much, Nitin, for this insightful presentation. It was indeed a really great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on Magic Bricks by tomorrow. This is Neha Nakpal, the moderator of the session, signing off. Thank you all.
Thank you and have a great day.